Welcome to another episode of How Basketball Saved My Life. I'm your host, The Easy Button.
And your host, Twan the Don.
And we have a very special guest in here for y'all today, Coach Carlin Hartman. How you doing today, Coach?
Great, Coach.
Good to meet you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Man, absolutely. Thank you for coming, man. I know it's a lot going on out here today, and, we appreciate you coming, getting. We got a lot of gems to drop today because, there's a young guy like myself, Twan over there. We all want to be aspiring coaches. We all want to blaze the trail that you've blazed. And so, without further ado, let's get into that. So where are you from for the people that don't know, even though everything's on Google, so.
Yeah, originally from Buffalo, New York, born and raised there, ended up going to high school in the suburbs of Buffalo, Grand Island High School. And from there, played at Tulane University. After Tulane, played a couple of years in the CBA, which is now the G League.
Okay,
I was trying to figure it out because everything's on Google, so I'm like, CBA, the only CBA I know is China.
Yeah. So back then, the CBA didn't have the same affiliation with the NBA. Like you have your teams in Frisco that goes to the Mavericks, or a team in Rio Grande Valley that goes to the Rockets. Back then the CBA was kind of like a mixture of hodgepodge of teams in Albany and Rapid City, South Dakota, where I played at, as well as Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Yakima. And so any team can grab a guy from those teams as a free agent and sign him to a 10-day contract, or maybe a second 10-day contract. And if you were fortunate enough to get the third one, that'd be for the remainder of the season. Okay. Nowadays, obviously, teams have the two-way contracts, right, and they have their minor league affiliate where those players can go and play, and then also play a handful of games in the NBA. So it's a better system now than it was back when I played.
So guys in G League now basically have guys like you to think, because you guys helped get it started.
Well, it was way even before me. A lot of guys got their teeth in the CBA. Coaches in particular, like Flip Saunders, was a great coach in the CBA, and he won a couple of CBA championships. Nice. And then he ended up going to the big leagues and coaching with the Timberwolves. Phil Jackson got his start as a CBA coach with the Albany Patroons. If you watch The Last Dance, you can see some of the footage from that.
Is that the team from Mexico or New Mexico?
Well, he started his coaching in Mexico, and then he got a job with the Albany team in the CBA. And then from that, then he got on with the Chicago Bulls as an assistant coach, and then he replaced Doug Collins, and then history was made. So a lot of guys in the CBA that end up going to the NBA, from those leagues. And it was a fun time, back then to play, and it helped me get to where I am right now.
Awesome. So you mentioned college. How'd you even get started playing basketball, and was it your first love?
Funny thing, first love, and I grew up in Buffalo, New York, in the cold and so forth, but I really liked baseball. And back then, it's not like how it is now, where you almost have to decide which sport you're going to play at an early age, and you don't have a lot of multi-sport guys. Back then, you played three sports. In the fall, you played football. In the winter, you played basketball. In the spring, you played baseball.
Right.
And so, I played all three sports. And then as I got older, I stuck with two. I dropped football because I got hit. I got hit one time going across the middle. I was like, I like my knees a little bit too much. So I said, forget the football thing. And so then I stuck with basketball and baseball, and they never really overlapped that much, especially in the Northeast. You can only play a handful of baseball games. So
because of that weather?
Because of the weather. Yeah. The weather didn't really start getting warm in the Buffalo area until mid-April, and that's when our season kicked off in baseball. So, that being said, baseball was really a first love of mine. We're really close to the Canadian border, so my mom would take me up to Toronto Blue Jay games quite a bit.
That's tight.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so we were able to do that, and one of my favorite players was Dave Winfield, and at the time, Dave Winfield was, if I'm not mistaken, still the only professional athlete to get drafted in Major League Baseball, the NFL, and also the NBA.
Wow.
So, yeah, he was a multi-sport guy. He was one of the first ones.
Dave Winfield.
I
got to ask him to get on the show. I don't know how I'm going to get in contact with him, but that'd be a great how basketball saved my life content.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yes, but I love baseball. But then as things got, as I got older and so forth and grew even more, basketball was one of the secondary sports, but then it became my primary sport just over time. And I was able to make a huge jump between my freshman year of high school and that summer of going into my sophomore year. And I went to a couple of basketball camps locally. Back then, we didn't really have AAU basketball the way it is now, with the organizations like the EYBL or the
even when I was playing, it wasn't even like that.
It wasn't even like that, yeah. I mean, these kids nowadays have so many different opportunities to be able to play and be exposed, a lot more so than what we did coming up. So we didn't have those opportunities, and so I would play baseball in the summer for some club teams, and then I would play basketball and go to basketball camps. So I went to Niagara University basketball camp, and back then the big camp was 5-star basketball camp.
Yep.
And I went to a couple of sessions every year, and just got on getting better and better. And fortunately, I was able to get some looks at the Division I level, and got a chance to play at Tulane.
Did you give up baseball because basketball just started sprouting more for you, or?
I played baseball all the way through high school. I finished playing baseball all the way through my senior year in high school.
Wow.
So I did play both sports, but the basketball piece, it just, like after my sophomore year, I figured, and I started to realize, like, okay, there's something here with the basketball.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to be able to, at least at worst case scenario, get a Division II scholarship. But as time went on, I just, everything just kept on getting better and better. Skill set, athleticism, mental toughness and everything.
Yeah.
So it was great because, a lot of guys from the Western New York area, mostly people look at, and they say, oh, you're from Buffalo, New York, so they think that you're from New York City.
Right.
Well, Buffalo and New York City are about 400 miles apart. It's
For real?
It's for real. It's, Buffalo's in the western part of New York City.
Right.
And New York is in the southeastern part of the state, and it couldn't be two different worlds more.
Two different states nearly.
Yeah, it's pretty much. So it's very far from one another, and so we had our own thing going. Obviously, the New Yorkers had their own thing going as well. And a really cool thing that we used to have every summer was what we called the Empire State Games. And it was in 6 regions of New York State. We were in Western New York. That was Buffalo and Rochester. Central New York was like the Syracuse area. The Adirondack region was like Utica and Schenectady and so forth. Then you had New York City had its own region, and then you had Hudson Valley. And it was like a Olympic style games every year. And they would have it in different parts of New York State. And we were, and back then it was.
Did Buffalo ever take the New York Olympics?
We took the gold. we took the gold. We had open division and scholastic division. Scholastic was the high school guys. Open was the college guys. And you would see some unbelievable guys in the open division. Christian Leitner, Keith Robinson that played at Notre Dame, Cliff Robinson, they all played on the western side where I was from. New York City had like Derek Phelps, Jamal Mashburn, Khalid Reeves. So it was a lot of.
Y'all didn't need to leave the state to find competition.
It was right then and there, but that was almost kind of like our version of AU basketball within just like 1 week of every summer, and so.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was
a jam-packed week.
Yeah, and it was the great thing about it was, nowadays you can play up to, 60, 70 games in the summertime in, playing AAU basketball.
Right.
Then you had the Empire State Games to look forward to, or maybe a basketball camp to look forward to. So you didn't have a lot of options in terms of playing multiple games against other people. Therefore, you had to go out and play in the parks. A
bunch of open runs.
A lot of open runs. Yeah, just going and playing the blacktop and, just try to hone your game there. So you didn't have the AAU scene like you have it now.
So then when did you start garnering attention from colleges, and did you get any from baseball as well?
None for baseball, no. The baseball thing was just more or less, just kind of a fun thing, a hobby thing that I really like to do. But basketball-wise, it started around the end of my sophomore year, going into my junior year, a lot of interest, and mostly from the local schools. We had Niagara University, Canisius, St. Bonaventure, but growing up in that area, everybody who grows up in New York State, especially in my part of New York State, wanted to go to Syracuse.
Right.
And
they've always been great.
And they've always been, big time. And, that offer never came, for whatever reasons, but I just never got it. And so then I had to kind of shift my focus, and I was looking at a lot of mid-major schools and so forth. And then as time went on, then I got into my senior year when interest really started to pick up and the offers started to come in. All the local schools offered. Syracuse didn't, but Seton Hall did, and Providence did, and other schools in what was called the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MAC. So LaSalle University back then, who had a great team with Lionel Simmons, who's like one of the all-time leading scorers in college basketball history. He was an NBA first-round draft pick. Doug Overton, Randy Wood, really great team. And they were in Philadelphia. That was another offer I had. So I would say at the end I probably had 6 offers that I was kind of just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then there was one that just kind of was a outlier and just in a weird place that I'd never even thought about going, which was Tulane.
Why Tulane?
Yeah, man.
As soon as
where is Tulane?
It's in New Orleans.
Pretend like I don't know.
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. And so my offers were like from the Buffalo region to Philadelphia, Providence, and also in New Jersey, and then I have one from way down south in New Orleans, and. I said, if nothing else, I should just go visit, especially after getting all the mail outs and all the information and talking to the coaches. And once I got on campus, it was the most beautiful thing you ever seen. It's palm trees, it's a private school, it's in a great area of uptown New Orleans.
Nice.
Obviously, you got all the culture and so forth.
Lots of culture.
Yeah, and then
I've never been. I need to get there. I've never been.
You guys should absolutely get down there at some point if you can. And then the basketball program was just coming back. They took a 5-year hiatus for a point shaving scandal they had in the mid '80s. And so when I was getting recruited, I was a part of the second class of guys that they were trying to get in. And I figured, you know what, I know I'm going to play, especially if I just go in there and play hard and do what I've been doing. And
that was key.
Yeah, and it was in a great league at the time. Before you start seeing a lot of the shuffling of the conference realignments and so forth, our league in the Metro was Tulane, Florida State, Cincinnati, Louisville, Memphis, Virginia Tech.
It's a great
good team, yeah.
And so it's like South Carolina was in it. So it's like a great level of basketball. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to, see what I can do.
When I hear, it was in a great conference, it makes me think that you went in knowing that you wanted to play beyond college. Was that the case?
I didn't think about it at the time. I think anytime you get really good at a sport, you probably, have aspirations, or at least you should have aspirations of wanting to, play at the professional level. My big thing, when I chose Tulane was the opportunity, to, get away from my comfort zone there in Western New York, and go bet on myself in this conference that was, had these traditional powers. And, again, like I said, just kind of bet on myself. And I was fortunate that, I chose the right place because, I did play a lot in my freshman year, made the all-freshman team in the conference. At the time, and I knew I made a good decision.
And you went on to be number 10 or top 10 in scoring in school history.
Yeah, finished 10th in scoring. I was in the top 10 in rebounding, and you know, before our class in 1990 had gotten there, Tulane hadn't been to an NCAA tournament. By the time we left, we had been to 2 NCAA tournaments and 2 NITs. And in the class after I left, I went to another NCAA tournament. So we were in the golden era of like Tulane basketball. And fortunately, we had some really good coaches. And we had some very selfless guys. We played like a platoon system back then. They had the starters, and then they had a second group, and it was kind of like a really cool national thing back then. And we called the second group the posse.
Oh yeah, turn up.
Yeah. So the posse came in, and the starters played a little bit more of this, pass, cut, move, motion offense, and then we came in. We were pressing, we were running, we were getting up.
So y'all had 2 different teams,
and it was really cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just to be a part of, and we were actually this year we're all going to go into the Hall of Fame at Tulane.
Congratulations, man.
That's awesome.
That's going to be fun.
Exclusive.
Right.
I don't know. Hopefully you guys don't get to go in the Hall of Fame until the show comes out. That way it is an actual exclusive. But that is awesome, man.
We found out about a month ago that was going to happen. Well, then that year, in 1991-92, my sophomore year, we won the conference outright. And we went to the first NCAA tournament in school history.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is huge because they just come off a 5-year hiatus.
Yeah. And us being a part of the second class. The first year was, which we weren't a part of it, and I was a senior in high school, they were 4-24. And then my freshman year, we ended up being 15-13. And then sophomore year was the year I just spoke of, 22-9, NCAA tournament. Won an NCAA tournament first round game against St. John's University.
Huge win, and that's a hometown team.
Yeah, home state team for me. Yeah, so I knew all about Luke Carnesecca, Malik Sealy, and all those guys that we ended up playing against. So that was really cool and special for me. And then we ended up going back to the tournament the next year, and it was just a fun experience. So I'm very blessed.
Wow. So you made the right decision. You got out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Is that a message that you like to preach to people or players or whatever, or is that just something that you did for yourself and it just felt right?
Yeah, well, I probably would say the last thing that you said. It's something I did for myself and it felt right. But as I've gotten older, I think any young person, who is trying to strive for greatness and it doesn't matter what field you're in, whether or not you're trying to get into coaching or whether or not you're trying to, become the best. Physician, lawyer, whatever the case may be, you're going to be caught in some uncomfortable and uncompromising positions, and it really all depends on how you're able to deal with it. A lot of times, and I have to deal with this sometimes with my daughters. Sometimes they take things personal, and it's like it's not a personal attack on you. It's more or less like how are you going to be able to handle any type of adversity in which you deal with. And I remember my first semester when I got to Tulane, I was 1,500 miles away from school. From home. I'm in a dorm room. It's raining outside. I'm crying my eyeballs out. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can make it. I don't think I made the right decision. And then, literally I just had to rely on my teammates, rely on my coaches. And once the game started, being played, I was fine after that.
Right.
But it was not easy. But again, I wouldn't trade what I went through in that homesickness. I wouldn't trade what I went through, with learning of different teammates that came from all kinds of different walks of life. We had teammates from Chicago and Los Angeles, Indiana, Ohio, there in Louisiana, and together and to this day they're a lot of my best friends.
The boot,
man.
Man, what's your favorite place in Louisiana?
In the state?
Yes.
Like in terms of food-wise, or where to go?
Well, I don't know. I've never been, so you talk to me. What's your favorite place there?
Oh, man. Well,
I hear the food is amazing.
The food's unbelievable. Now, back when I was, and again, this is, I got out of school in 1994. So between 90 and 94, we spent a lot of time in the French Quarter, which was really cool. But even that became touristy and old. And you got so many hole-in-the-wall restaurants in the city of New Orleans that you can go to and really enjoy. I hate to say it because LSU is down the road and a rival, but Baton Rouge is a really cool place to go to.
Oh man, you're gonna hate saying that one after this one.
I do, but really going to school in Louisiana also opened my eyes to it was the first time I had ever seen professional African Americans, in a, say, subdivision or neighborhood that was affluent. I had never experienced that in upstate New York. My family, I have uncles who have done well, working for General Motors or working for the, different universities in and around the city. But we lived. If they lived in certain parts of Buffalo or even the suburbs, they would be one family of African Americans with 95 to 97%, white families.
Right.
But when I got to New Orleans, I had some extended family on my mom's side, and they lived in this part of New Orleans called New Orleans East. And which was about, say, 20 minutes from campus in New Orleans. And it was literally the first time I had ever seen an all-black neighborhood that was, pristine and just kept up well.
Thriving.
And, it was, and I just said to my cousin, I said, okay, so who all lives on the street? And he said, oh yeah, right down there is someone who owns a pharmacy, and there's a lawyer here, judge down here, doctor over here,
wow.
CEO, and I'm just like, okay, and I'm seeing all these people coming out, driving down the street, and they're all black, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, what's going on?
Yeah,
and it was really cool.
I'm about to drive that neighborhood when I go down there.
Yeah,
I got to see it.
But there's more of those, nowadays.
Everywhere.
Yeah, you see it more. Obviously, in Atlanta, you go to Atlanta where you can see, how well we're doing and so forth. But that was the first time I had ever experienced that. So you asked me what was my favorite part of Louisiana, I would probably say just that neighborhood in New Orleans East.
Yeah,
That's right there.
That's dope, because I don't think I've seen it still, and I'm older now, and
Sure.
I've seen a few places, raised in Florida, been in Ohio, live in Oklahoma. I don't think I've seen it yet, and so that's something that I need to get around to seeing and want to be a part of. So, boom. So you touched on it a little bit, playing professionally. So you didn't try to go overseas at all?
I had someone who was helping represent me at the time, and we had kind of talked through it. I ended up playing in the USBL, which was a league that kind of bridged between the end of the college season and the NBA draft. So I played in that league. And
so like a summer league, like a NBA summer league?
Yeah, it was kind of like an NBA spring-summer league or spring/summer league. And there was, say, 8 teams that played in that league. Actually, some of the players that ended up playing that league ended up playing in the NBA, like Darrell Armstrong was in that league. Who ended up playing for Orlando Magic for quite some time.
That's right.
And a couple other guys that played in that league, just trying to get a look. So I was able to play in that league, and then from there, I played in the LA Summer League, which is, I think now, if I'm not mistaken, the Drew League.
Okay.
And so I went and did that.
Boy, you're a trailblazer for real, man.
Well, but I did it to get a look,
Right.
I wasn't a first-round pick or a second-round pick at the time, but I did it to, just kind of
Build up.
Yeah, build up and try to get the exposure, just try to get a shot. The USBL helped. The USBL helped me get in the summer league, and so when I got to the summer league, I was playing on a free agent team, and I did so well in that particular team that I got picked up by a team comprised of NBA players, and so I was able to play. It was a Magic Johnson All-Stars, as a matter of fact, and I played with some guys that, like Adam Keefe was on that team, Tony Farmer. Other former Stephen Thompson, who played at Syracuse, now assistant coach at Oregon State. So I was able to play with those guys, and from there I got drafted in the CBA in the 3rd round, and from there I went to camp. And at the time in the CBA, they only kept 1 rookie per team. They had to keep 1 rookie, and it was me. On the rookie that came in as rookie, it was me, Sam Crawford, who was a guard at New Mexico State, great player, and Marty Clark, who just finished his career at Duke. We were the 3 rookies that came into the camp, along with all these other veterans. And so it was a 3-week camp, and by the end of it, I ended up being the only rookie to stick around. And those other guys ended up going to other places. And so I just gave it a shot. I said, you know what, I'm here now. I had a couple of teammates that ended up leaving and going up to the big leagues, and then I got a chance to play more and so forth. So by the end of my second year, things were starting to, pick up a little bit, and then I tore my ACL and MCL.
Oh, Google didn't tell me that.
No, I won't tell you that.
Dang.
I won't tell you that one.
So was it just 2 years, that's it? Or did you rehab? And
at the time I wanted to rehab, and I thought, I would give it another shot at it. But then I was like, you know what? So rehab's going to take a year.
Yep.
An ACL and MCL tear back then, the medical science wasn't as good as it is today.
Big facts.
You're talking about a full year off, and now, I've probably lost a lot of ground. Money wasn't great in the CBA and so forth. So then I said, you know what? Let me try to get myself into coaching.
I can't imagine what money was like in the CBA, because when I was trying to be in a D League, before it was a G League, when I was trying to get into that, the salary coming in was like $9,000 to $12,000 for the season.
Yeah. It's probably about what I was making.
So that's why I'm like, when I was trying that, I'm like, okay, this is not going to be the route for me. Then I tried and went overseas for a little bit.
Sure.
Very, very, very little. Went to Puerto Rico, ended up getting cut in training camp there. But I too suffered a knee injury, and I had a family.
Yeah.
And so I had to make that decision between rehab and try to go get it, or, at the time I was already moving around a lot. My son was born already, things like that. And so I'm like, I had to weigh my options.
Yeah, you did the responsible thing.
So I did the responsible thing, stuck around, and I don't regret it.
Oh.
I love the game. I found a way to stay around it. But
right.
I bring that up to say, did you have a family around the time when you decided to choose not to rehab it and to walk away from it?
No. I was by myself. I couldn't even imagine, what you were going through. That would have been a lot tougher. Or, you know what, maybe it would have been an easier decision to just because of the responsibilities that you had. But I didn't have that. But I always just kind of felt like, I was going to use my degree in some way, shape, or form. And I knew I wanted to coach, while I was playing at Tulane. And once that situation happened, when I got hurt, after about 4 to 5 months of wallowing around in my self-pity because I felt bad about
Been there.
my knee and so forth.
We've all three been there.
I can't play no more. Then I said, well, let me just get off my ass here and see if I can, get myself, a job, in coaching.
You said something very interesting. So right now I'm a young coach, but I didn't know I wanted to coach until the very end, when I was like, how do I stay around the game?
Yeah.
How do it makes me so happy. How do I stay around it? But you knew while you were playing. Yeah. When did you know?
I just, they put me in a lot of leadership roles at Tulane. I was very fortunate to play a lot early on, and I was entrenched in the rotation and in the lineup, and Coach used to talk to me quite a bit, and on the floor, I'd look over to him. I'm the one who's kind of echoing out calls and so forth, and we would talk after the season, just kind of like a season in review, like this is what you got to work on, this you got to get better at. I think it was one conversation we had after my sophomore year, and he just said, okay, well, now going into your junior year, these guys are leaving. We're going to be counting on you more, to up your scoring and up, certain things. And then for some reason, we started talking about just, the future and beyond. I said, hey, Coach, I still want to play pro. And he's like, you know what, that's fine, but, I think you'd be a great coach, by the way you communicate on the floor, you're not afraid to ruffle feathers, if need be, but the guys know that you care about them.
And know it's coming from a good place.
It's coming from a good place and so forth. He said, I think you'd be a really good coach. I kind of started to think about that a little bit. And then, as the next couple of years went on, it never went away.
Right.
And
it's like once that seed is sowed, and it's something that resonates with you, it's like, man, I wish you would have never told me that, or I wish, I'm glad you told me that, because now it becomes a part of your thinking.
Sure.
Long term. So then we fast forward to the knee injury.
Yeah.
How quickly did you turn to coaching?
Oh man, probably 6-7 months after that. After I got done, doing all the wallowing. And stuff, I actually contacted my old AAU coach, and we did have a little AAU back then, but it wasn't like it is now.
Yeah.
And so my old coach was a guy by the name of Mickey Walker, who I would play with in the summer times. And our summer events were like 1 or 2 events in the summertime, not very much, or maybe even an event in the springtime. And so he had a team, and this is when AAU basketball was starting to take off a little bit. So this is the summer of 1998, and I call him up, and I said, hey, just want to see if, maybe I can get together with you and just talk about, coaching, and, I know you know a lot of coaches and so forth. How can I get in? He said, well, matter of fact, I'm taking a team out to Las Vegas. Why don't you jump on a plane and meet me in Vegas? So he paid for my ticket to go to Vegas, room and everything.
Oh, that's fire.
And so I was staying with 2 other guys, so it wasn't.
The fire wasn't that.
It was cool and all that.
The fire wasn't that.
Yeah, it wasn't that plus, but he did pay for my ticket. He did pay for my ticket to come out there, and he's a very loyal man. So I go out to Vegas with him, and at the time, it's not like it is now, where as college coaches, when you go see an event, you just got to pretty much, walk right by the student athletes. You can't talk to them. You can't talk to the coaches on site. You can't talk to the players on site, none of that. Back then, the coaches can come over to you and actually talk to the coaches of the AAU team. So I was an assistant coach on one of the top teams, and we had a kid that ended up going to Syracuse. We had another one that ended up going to Rhode Island, Cincinnati, and so forth. So, all these coaches are coming up to me and my guy Mickey Walker, and just asking about the players on our team. And through all those conversations, I ended up finding out about a job opening that was at Rice University. And at the time, the job was the 3rd assistant. And it sounds glamorous and everything, but the 3rd assistant back then was a restricted earnings position. Your title was assistant coach, but you couldn't go out on the road and recruit. And you couldn't, you can coach on the floor, but that was the only difference. You couldn't recruit. And then you were restricted to only earn a certain amount of money. I was by myself. I wasn't like you, coach. I didn't have a family.
Right.
So I said to myself, man, if I can get that job, that'd be great. So
is that comparable to GA now?
That might be, the restricted earnings back then would probably be comparable to what a director of basketball is now,
Okay.
I would say. You are able to do a lot of responsibilities, except for the off-campus recruiting. Okay. That was the only difference. We go through the tournament. We're out there for like 10 days. And I find out more about this Rice job. And so the cool thing was there were a lot of coaches that still remember me as a player at Tulane, who I would see and run into, and I would say, hey. And
they remember you getting in their tail, too.
Well, that, and I remember, certain situations where it ended up going the other way, too. But they were all really cool, and they were all really nice. I said, hey, there's this job open at Rice. If you know Coach Wilson, could you put a good word in for me, and so forth. So I'm doing that for like 5 days or whatever. And then finally, at the end of the day, the last day, I end up getting an opportunity to sit down with Coach Wilson as he's watching the game, and we talk and so forth. It's a great conversation. Then we end up going to dinner that night, and it kind of moved pretty quickly. And then the next thing you know, 2 days later, I get a phone call. He says, hey, I'd like you to be my 3rd assistant. And it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. So I'm 27, 28 years old, and I have this opportunity. Now I'm making $18,000 in a year.
Right.
And for me, you know what? That was more than what I was making in the CBA. So
right. Step up.
I was like, you know what? And the job came with a car. Only thing I had to do was just get myself an apartment, and I only had myself to worry about,
sure.
which was perfectly fine for me. So,
Now, where's Rice at?
Houston, Texas. Yeah.
Houston, Texas?
Houston. Yep,
Okay,
yep,
gotcha.
Yep. So, and back then it was in the Western Athletic Conference, 16 teams, 2 different sides. They had an Eastern Division and a Western Division. Now it's in Conference USA.
Conference USA.
Yeah. Yep. So that was my break into college coaching, and a lot of it had to do with my AAU coach giving me an opportunity to go out to Vegas, and a lot of it had to do with the people who I
Had to
played
connect
against and my coaches from Tulane that put a good word in for me.
I'm trying to tell people how basketball does take you a long way, just with the people you meet, all the connection you make. Like, even though you may not play, it still takes you somewhere just because of the people you meet.
Well, and one of the things I've always learned, my mother gave me the best advice. She said, "Never ever burn a bridge." And
Great advice.
But it's the simplest thing, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, time and time again. But it has so much meaning behind it because when I accepted the scholarship offer to Tulane and committed to Tulane, she made me call every school that I wasn't going to go to. And some of the hardest call was to Niagara University at the time. They were like 10 minutes away from my home, and they really wanted me. And I had to call Coach Armstrong. Jack Armstrong is his name. He's now the color analyst for the Toronto Raptors. Wow. And he, was like, "I really appreciate you calling. You got good parenting. Nowadays kids will just send you a text, 'Hey, Coach, I'm going somewhere else.'"
Right. Or they don't even say nothing.
Or they don't say
find
nothing.
Out
you
on
just
Twitter.
find it on Twitter or social media, and it is what it is. So that was part of her. Remember, I think, she don't burn that bridge. Don't burn that bridge. But Coach Armstrong, 6 years later, was one of the people that called Coach Wilson on my behalf for the Rice job because of how I handled it.
Exactly.
So that's where
that's gems right now. He's dropping gems. That's fire.
It doesn't matter, what walk of life you're in. I mean, you want to treat people, with respect and dignity and so forth. And really, however you handle, trials, tribulations, doesn't matter. It's just all about, the impression that you make on that person or those people, whether or not you've gotten the job or haven't gotten the job.
Right.
Because at some point in time, there's going to be another opportunity down the road. It may not happen for you right then and there.
Right.
But it could happen for you in the future.
Right. So was Rice? So after Rice, did you go straight to OU from Rice?
No.
Let's get into it.
No, I mean, this past year was year number 20. So from Rice, I went to McNeese State for a year, and I kind of jumped around a little bit too much. That job I was talking about at Rice was a restricted earnings job, so there was no recruiting. Then my college coach who recruited me to Tulane had a head coaching job at McNeese State. I ended up taking the McNeese State job, and it was just not a good fit for me at the time. It wasn't really, into living in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and, other reasons. I just, wasn't really ready for it.
Fit is everything.
It wasn't even, I even still get uncomfortable talking about it. Leaving that situation, it should have been a better situation, but my mind just wasn't really, where it needed to be. And so I left there and I'm going back to Rice as director of basketball operations for a couple of years. Then from there, I went to Louisiana Lafayette, coached there for a year. We went to the NCAA tournament. This was in 2004. Really good and talented team. Coached an NBA kid, guy by the name of Orion Green, who ended up being a second-round pick of the Celtics.
Nice.
Played a while in the NBA and overseas. Then from there, I went to the University of Richmond for 4.
Rich what? Richmond.
And then from Richmond, then I started to kind of get title changes. When you get a certain title, it a lot of times in our industry, it promotes, okay, this is the next coach in waiting, or, it makes you look a little bit different, especially at the mid-major level. So then I became associate head coach at Columbia University in the Ivy League.
So what's the difference between associate head coach and assistant head coach? or assistant coach?
The associate title is like you're the next in line or the first chair, after the head coach.
Okay. These are things I need to start knowing.
Yeah, I mean, no, it does give you. What it did for me at, say, Columbia was it allowed me to sit in on meetings when my boss wasn't able to, like with, say, administrators or even boosters and so forth. I was always looked at the guy like, this is my right-hand guy right here. Like if Kyle wasn't around, then he would say, go to Carlin, talk to Carlin about it. He's got it, And so he essentially allowed me to help him run the program.
Which gave you a lot of great experiences.
Yeah, great experience, unbelievable experience, and it made me look. It helped me be looked at a little bit differently amongst my peers, in the industry. Then fast forward, I go back to Rice, third time at Rice.
Third time.
Yeah, first time as assistant, but third assistant restricted earnings, and second time as director of basketball. Now third time as associate head coach. So I go back to Rice as associate coach. There for a couple of years, get the thing going again, and that was two of the funnest years. Even though we were 24 and I think 40, 12 and 20 both years. The first year, we probably had 2 Division I guys on a roster of 12 scholarship guys. Those kids should not have been on scholarship. Let me tell you. They just. but we had. The heart that those kids showed and gave us, the things in which they allowed us to.
So 12 wins was great.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't have won more than 5 or 8 games. And we started out 1-8, but we just kept going and grinding, and those kids believed in the process. And we did a boot camp in the summertime that I think kind of helped us. And then all of a sudden now we get in the league play and we're knocking off teams like Western Kentucky and UAB, and it's like, we got something.
Like we did that.
Yeah. And then we get into the second year and we have a lot more talent, but there's like 6 freshmen. And so we had to build that whole team up, and they only got the 12 wins too, but that was a foundation for the next year. They had to win 26 games, And that third year, that was my first year here at Oklahoma. So I went from Rice to Oklahoma, and I've been here, and this will be going into year 5.
Year 5 at OU. So now we're almost in the present day.
Yeah.
OU has had some tremendous talent within these past, 4 or 5 years, however long you've been here.
Well, yeah, and, Coach has been here. This will be Coach Kruger's 10th year. So
10th year.
You talk about just as a whole, what he's done since he's been here has been, pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So talk to us about what goes into, getting that talent when, there are the likes of, the Kentuckys of the world, the Memphises, North Carolinas, because, OU's making it to tournament after tournament, and that's not shabby.
No, not at all. If we had the tournament this year, this would have been the 7th tournament in 9 years.
Incredible.
And we were on schedule to do so until, obviously, the pandemic and COVID shut everything down. And to your point, that's not an easy thing to do.
Exactly.
And I think what happens a lot of times, because Coach Kruger is so consistent in his approach, consistent in terms of, never – being too high or too low, too high after a win or too low after a loss. He stays, pretty even keel.
And that's a skill.
It really is.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it, truth be told.
I know, because I get too emotional sometimes.
Right. Yeah, and I've seen you coach on the sideline. I can understand that.
For sure.
When you're in the game and you're invested in what's going on.
And you love it and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And, when you look at them, like our last game of the year before COVID hit, we had a really crazy week, that last week of the year. We had a crazy game against Texas.
Game winners.
The kid hits a bank shot, just over half court, running full speed. We think we got the win, and all of a sudden that thing goes in, we lose by 1.
Right.
Then we turn around, we go to TCU, and we're still kind of emotionally drained from the Texas loss. We ended up going down by 22 points. We're down 22 on the road.
Wait for it.
And we're like just kind of reeling right now. And that game had a lot on it because if we win, we're the third seed in the conference tournament. If we lose, we drop all the way down to seventh, and that means we got to play an extra game.
That's how tough the conference is.
And it really is. The conference is no joke. I mean, I know a lot of times people will say, and I want to go back to your question here in a second in terms of how do you recruit, at this level, especially without cheating. Let's be honest.
For sure.
But that game, it was just indicative of like watching coach and just seeing how poised he was, and a credit to our guys. We just kept on pounding away, and we were down by 19 at half. So, to win this game, we got to, figure out a way to outscore them by 20. We're down by 13 with 5 minutes to go. We got to make a push. Almost everything has to go perfect, from on the defensive end of the floor to the offensive end of the floor. We ended up making our last 5 shots from the field. They end up, going one for their last 5 from the field, and we end up winning by 2. And we just kind of stuck with it.
And was that on Reeves' game winner?
Austin's game winner in his 41-point game, at the end of the year, which is a tough thing to do in college.
Big buckets.
Yeah, he was unbelievable in that game. But, going back to the recruiting piece, I think a lot of times we always kind of just look and see how can we, maximize. First of all, OU is a top 25 program, in the history of college basketball.
Right. But often overshadowed by football.
Correct. Yeah. And that's fair to say. You can understand. I get that football's been great here, but basketball's
come a long way.
Basketball's coming.
Yeah, you talk about guys that have coached in their past. John McLeod, a former NBA coach, and obviously Billy Tubbs was outstanding. Kelvin Sampson, great. Coach Kruger and so forth. So there's been a lot of really good coaches that have come through here. And I think when they hired Coach Kruger, the previous staff had some issues with the NCAA. And they hired Coach Kruger to come in, clean it up, and not just clean up the program, but also win basketball games. And
he's done.
And he's done it. He's done that. And it really is nowadays. Obviously, your blue bloods, your Kentuckys, your Kansases, your Dukes, North Carolinas. Those are the standard bearer programs.
Blue bloods for real.
Yeah. And so the thing that we just try to create a niche of transparency when we recruit the kids, and just also talk about the history of the program. You talk about the players that have come before. Your Trey Youngs, your Buddy Hields, Isaiah Cousins, guys that have gotten drafted under Coach Kruger, Romero Osby, another guy that's gotten drafted. So we've had NBA draft picks. We've had high picks in the draft that have gone on and do really special things. We got 3 guys in the league right now that are all doing exceptionally well. All-stars and Blake and Trey. Buddy's soon to be an all-star. Buddy wins a 3-point contest this year. So we still have a lot of things in which we can promote to kids and just say, hey, you can come here and you can do some really special things, and you're going to have the resources to do it. You got a guy in Coach Kruger who's done it for 35 years and been an NBA coach in the process, so he knows what it takes to get you where you should go. And
continue to build on a rich tradition. So the thing about what I love about what OU is doing is that it's not a tradition established. It's a tradition that continues to be built, with guys like yourself, Coach Kruger, Trey, Buddy, Cousins, Blake, and it's an ongoing process. And I always feel like it's better when you're not, for example, like Trey could have gone anywhere, but he came here and he did it, and so I feel like it's not a thing where, I'm going to go here where it's easier. You come here, you grind it out, and it's a great experience. So in saying that, how has it been like? You've coached several NBA talent already. So how has it been like for you do you know coming in that they're NBA talent, or is that a thing that you guys figure out mid-season, stride? How'd that come about?
So, I came in after the Final Four year, and so I was not able to coach Buddy. But from everything that I understand and have heard, in between him and Cousins, their work ethic was unmatched.
Fun to watch.
Yeah, 3 times a day, consistently, morning, afternoon, night, in the gym, working out. I don't think anyone thought that Buddy was going to be what Buddy became.
For sure.
You know, when he first stepped foot on campus here in Norman. And every year he got better and better.
Every
and better.
year.
And he improved on something, some part of his game, you know, from one year to the next. He wasn't a great three-point shooter his first year.
That's what I heard. That's hard to believe.
Well, he shot 25%
I
from
think like
three.
first and second year, he wasn't really shooting threes
And
that
even
much.
second year, not great. He was a great athlete and a great driver, but what he was always a really good athlete, and he was always in great condition, so he can run for days.
Then when he found out he had a jumper, he
Found out he
Yeah, you fast forward to his junior year, all of a sudden now that jumper, you know, gets about 40% from three, and then senior year he puts the whole thing together, and then all of a sudden now
senior year, now he's shooting off the dribble
he didn't
from
have
three.
to go to the rim no more.
exactly.
He don't even got to watch it go in.
Yeah, he's running back on the other end. But I think Buddy's deal was just more or less, you know, he could have been a second-round pick after his junior year. And so we talked about earlier about betting on yourself. He bet on himself. He said, you know what, I could be a first-round pick. So he
Right.
comes back for his senior year. Naismith Player of the Year, 6th overall pick.
And Sweet 16?
Final.
Final Four.
Final Four, that's right.
Sweet 16 is junior year.
Yeah.
You know, and then so you ask about, you know, a talent like, say, Trey. I think everybody in our program knew that Trey was going to be an NBA player. It was just a matter of when he was going to be an NBA player.
Right.
I would be sitting here lying if I told you that Trey was going to do what he did his freshman year. And really what he did that first half of his freshman year, the first 11
Amazing.
games we had, I mean, we go up to the PK80 in Portland, and I think it's our 4th game of the year, and he has 40 against Oregon. And he did it with, you know, not that many shots, and he's still getting everybody involved and so forth. Then we go to Wichita State. They're ranked 3rd on their home floor. We end up beating them by 10. Trey's outstanding, along with Brady Manick. And we just kept going, and it was really fun to watch. I think by the time we played TCU at home, it was an overtime game. Trey had 11 threes and like 10 assists, and I think at that moment everybody was like, "He's not going to be here beyond this year."
Right.
Like, this is some
This is
special
what we
stuff
get,
right here. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about an elite passer, obviously. Deep range on his jump shot, you know, quickness and so forth, and
Ball on a string.
yeah, and it's just the talent, you know, was just.
So knew pretty early on with Trey. And
Trey was pretty
and
early on.
from what we know, Buddy just was a workhorse.
He's a workhorse, yeah. You know, and certain guys, you know, you can tell, you can see, you know, if they have that it factor and so forth. I think, you know, on this current team that we had this past year, Christian Doolittle. He's going to be a guy that's going to end up being on the NBA roster at some point. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen this year or what, but I can almost guarantee you that he's going to be playing basketball in the National Basketball Association.
I
at some
love
point
watching
next
him
couple
play.
years.
He's got a league game,
Yes, he
league
does.
body.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And the thing about him is, I think any opposing coach would probably tell you, if you polled the coaches around the league, of course, Azubuike from Kansas was unguardable. He's unguardable and just like a Shaq-like.
Right. He's like a man.
Christian Doolittle was the toughest matchup in our league. Bill Self said it. Chris Beard said it. You know, you were almost kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't when you try to game plan against him. If you switched, then he's just gonna go to the block, and now you got to guard him. If you shadowed or dropped on the ball screen coverage, now you just throw it back to him, and now the big guy's trying to recover.
And he's gonna attack that closeout.
Now he's gonna attack that closeout, or he's gonna shoot the three. So, you know, once he, you know, got really comfortable, his senior year he was just kind of like almost like a maestro. Like he was ready for that role.
Right.
You know, junior year he was 3rd team all league and most improved player in the conference. In between junior and senior year, he put a lot of time in, a lot of work in, and you know he was tremendous throughout the entire year. Ended up being 1st team all league. So, but I think he's going to play in the league.
No, you could see it.
Yeah.
You could see it, and hopefully everything that's going on didn't hurt his chances, knock on wood.
Right.
So let's go back to a question I have for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned Buddy. We talked about Trey.
Yeah.
Who is the best shooter out of the two? I got my pick. So I want to get your take, and then Twan, you can give yours after Coach.
Yeah, I think they're both elite. If I want a guy, taking a shot, with the game on the line, Buddy had proven it time and time again. But that question is going to be one that I'm just going to have to hold close to the vest because I am smart enough not to go there. They're both great.
They are both great. Way to be
They're both great.
correct.
I'm gonna keep it simple. One won the 3-point competition, so that says enough right there.
Okay.
Okay, well,
For now, we'll give it to Buddy.
okay. I guess since he beat him in a competition, you can go there. For me, it was about, like you said, one's proven.
Yeah.
I mean, watching like that Final Four run,
Yeah.
Buddy had some stretches, man.
Big shots.
I was just like, good Lord, right? But I think Trey's a better off the dribble shooter. I think Buddy's a better catch and shoot guy. I think I'm gonna go with Buddy.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go with Buddy. But now Trey, you just gotta prove yourself, man. All right, you just gotta prove yourself.
One thing about Trey is he will prove himself.
Absolutely, and it's not like it's by a landslide.
No.
If it's off the dribble, fine, Trey, you got that. If it's let me draw something up for you to get a catch and shoot,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to Buddy. So I'm gonna take one in one area and then one in the other. So
Buddy, obviously, he will live forever in Oklahoma lore because he was here for 4 years.
Facts.
And people were able to see him do those things that what you guys are talking about. Trey was here for 1 year, and it might have been the most dynamic 1 year of basketball that you've ever seen from an individual player.
I mean, led the league in scoring and assists.
The country.
Broke some records.
Yeah. I mean, both guys are phenomenal. And, the great thing about both those guys is in a normal year, you could do your podcast from over at our practice facility, and they will be in that gym. They'll be in that gym working out together.
Doesn't matter.
They'll be in that gym, playing one-on-one against one another. And that attracts Isaiah Cousins coming back, and that'll attract Blake will come back, every so often in the summer.
Blake, we need you on the show, baby.
And it's, being a part of this program has been really cool just because you get to see a lot of the history. Every year we have an alumni weekend. Most years we'll have a game. Last year we just had a golf tournament and an event at Coach's house. And to see the Sooners, past, present Sooners, come back for those weekends, it's remarkable. The history of this program.
That's awesome, man. Wow. Well, before we let you go, got one more question for you, okay? Because, let's see. Got a lot of people that want to get into coaching. I myself is one of them.
Yeah.
What message do you have for those guys who want to get started in coaching?
I think the biggest message I can give would be, willingness to do whatever. Some people are going to be in certain situations where, you may have a family or you may not have a family. Some are going to get jump starts earlier than others.
Right.
I guess the biggest key is patience.
Patience.
Patience
You're
is
in
a
year
huge
20,
key.
right?
I'm in year 20. Patience is a huge key to get into this thing. I think also the other thing, too, is understanding that you have to, whatever job you're in at that time is the most important job that you can have.
Right.
Do that to the best of your ability. If you're a middle school coach and you work your way up to the high school level, and then you can work your way up to small college, junior college, whatever the case may be, you may have to be willing to take jobs that are going to be entry-level positions.
Starter roles.
But you have to understand and know that if you're patient and you work your tail off and you do it with a caring heart, then, somebody will take a chance on you, But if you try to rush the process, if you try to, do things and take shortcuts, that's where, a lot of people who are trying to get into this industry will fall short and maybe even fail.
What's an example of a shortcut?
A shortcut is essentially, doing something against NCAA rules.
True.
Coach may say, hey, go pay for this guy's, go take out, this recruit's parents or whatever the case may be. Or,
Right.
It could be anything. That's the best, that's the hardest, and that's the worst way of trying to make an impression, is when you feel like, okay, I have this opportunity at this level, and my boss tells me to do something, even though it may be against the rules, and then you still do it. That's, that could really be detrimental to a career, and so I would just, tell anybody out there that wants to, get into college coaching, professional coaching, whatever the case may be, it's just all about, patience. It's all about, just allowing the process to happen naturally. What you guys are doing is great. I think this forum is outstanding.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
And really, you guys will have opportunities, come your way in time, as long as you're just willing to know and understand that you might have to work, basketball camps in the summertime to get to know our staff at OU, or you go and work and get to know Mike Boyd and his staff at OU. Let them see your faces. Be willing to take GA spots. And then, from there, if you do a great job in those particular jobs, that's when other things start to come up, But to just jump right in and become an assistant, that's hard to do.
For sure.
You have to
I got that sense hearing you talk.
Yeah, because you have to be like, let's be honest, like if you're at Duke or North Carolina, they hire their own guys a lot of times.
Right.
So it's hard to get in that particular fraternity.
Right.
But you'll have to like kind of grind your way through, lower level jobs in order to get to the higher level jobs. And if you're patient and willing to do that, and you do it again with a good, caring, sincere heart, and then you make it about the players, and you make it about, and not about yourself, then you have a great opportunity. You have a great chance. You just need one person, one program, one coach to say, I'm gonna bet on this guy right here.
Well, you guys, you heard it here first, man. It was a great show, and we appreciate you coming through. You dropped gems today. You dropped gems today. We appreciate you. It was fun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us as we drop gems that we picked up in these gems. See you next time. Peace.